Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Karl and Kofi. Man, we are back. I'm excited, brother.
Back at it, baby. It's been a little while. We've been on a bit of a hiatus, just with kind of the hustle and bustle of the new year. I know that both
Yeah.
of us have been running and gunning and a lot of exciting things have been happening, but we're so back to be back with you all, and we got a great one today to break down. We're talking about Seth Godin's The Dip, which I'm so
Yes,
happy that we decided to go this direction. I read the book
dude.
several years ago.
Yeah.
And when you had
Yeah.
brought it up, I was like, you know what? I actually need a tune up on this concept because there are so many things that we're working on in our business, things that I'm even working on personally that, are starting to really have the rubber hit the road, so to speak. And
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
been sort of feeling some inherent resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
The novelty and the excitement of some of these projects have sort of worn off. So the
Yeah.
book was a great refresher to really embrace some of the concepts that he talks about. So I can't really wait to peel the layers back on this one, brother.
Dude, I feel the same exact way. So we're going to be talking today about understanding when to quit and when to stick, which is just
Yeah.
such an important piece in life. Like I feel like out of, a lot of the books that we've read and dived into so far, this book in particular is like a book that everyone needs to read in life
Mhm.
because I feel like we all go through those times where we're like, man, like they're either, getting into an area or getting into a position where they're like, man, should I keep going? Like, how do I know if I should like sustain this activity? Or they're in an area where they're like, man, like I've been going so long and I don't know if I should quit. So we're gonna be like illuminating all of this for you guys today. I've definitely had quite a few personal experiences where I've, quit at the right moment or not quit at the right moment. So I'm excited to yes, share, man. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah, man. Well, let's dig in. I'm looking at my notes here. There are eight things that I thought were
Mhm.
really pivotal that I thought, we'd bring to the audience. And
Yeah.
this idea of the dip and the cul-de-sac. So
Mhm.
let's tell the audience what the dip actually is,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I'm happy to start and we can just sort of riff, but
Yeah.
essentially those that have not read, the dip is that setback, right? It's that moment
Mhm.
in time where the activity, the task, the project that you're working on becomes difficult, right? It's sort of
Mhm.
lost the novelty, as I just mentioned, in terms of being the new exciting thing that you're pursuing. Think about this in terms of anything that you've ever set out to do. One of the things that I remember being so excited about was learning French. I spent time in Europe. I'm going to learn French. We're from Cameroon. We're French speaking. And I was doing the thing on Duolingo for several weeks. And then all of a sudden, life got in the way, right? And so I started missing my lessons. Like that's that dip. That's that
Mhm.
proverbial sort of, downward track that
Yeah,
stops you from doing the thing. And so Godin in the book essentially talks about it as the place where that excitement has worn off and
exactly. Yeah.
challenges become more significant. And I think to your point,
Mhm.
Kofi, this is a universal experience as humans, right?
Yeah.
So tell us how you think about the dip.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, like I loved it when he said it's the dip is the stretch between beginner's luck and real accomplishment.
Mm,
And it's also that period where like all that hype, as you mentioned, from starting really starts to wear off. And it's like between that period and the satisfaction of mastery. And
yeah,
so, like, you were like anything worth doing in life is going to have a dip. That's the reality of it. Whether that dip is going to be like man made barriers that come up or just like things along that path that are going to make it difficult for you to sustain, certain activity. And like nowadays, I feel like there's so many different like shiny objects. There's so many different things that can attract us. There's so many different, opportunities out there. I think a lot of times people will like, get into doing something and it's like super
yeah,
exciting and they're like, man, this is super cool. And then once they come up on a challenge or they come up on some type of obstacle or whatever it is, they're like, oh,
right,
this can't be it. I got to try something else, right?
right.
Bounce around because they never actually go through that dip period. And I know for me, like,
Bingo.
I had met numerous times in my career, but I'll kind of bring it back to even like school. Because he actually mentions this as like a great example of the dip. So for pre-med students, organic chemistry, I remember you were a pre-med student as well too. I don't know.
Orgo got me, bro.
Yeah.
Orgo was my dip. That's how I'm not a doctor
Dude,
anymore.
oh my gosh. That was like the first, because I remember I was like a biology student, I love biology. Chemistry, I liked it was cool. But then when organic hit, bro, that's when it got real. That's when you really saw people truly struggle. And like the reality is like that class is literally meant to weed out
Yeah,
people to go into med school. And
right.
so this like important concept of the dip, I believe is so like critical to grasp because like anything that you go through is going to have that period. And if
Right.
you don't, or if you're not able to sustain, the things you're doing and like continue to look at that long-term goal, it's really hard to get through that dip, whether you're,
Yeah,
starting a new relationship, whether you're starting a new business, you're learning a new skill, it's anything like
mhm.
what having in life is going to have that dip aspect to it. So no.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
100%. And I think the reason that you and I are both so passionate about this concept is that this ultimately is the filter in life that
Mm-hmm.
determines people that win
Yeah.
versus those that quit. And this is a
Yeah.
lot of what it speaks about, right? Winners inherently are able to push past this dip, right?
Mhm.
They're able to
Lean
push
into it.
past that disruption that always follows your initial intention in order to get to a level of mastery
Mm-hmm.
where they ultimately are just orbiting in free-flowing space. And people look at them and like they go, man, how is that guy or how is that girl
Yeah.
just making it rain? And it's like, well, when you get to a certain level of mastery, there really isn't even that much competition anymore, right? And
Yeah.
you've also developed a certain level of skills and knowledge and expertise as a result of going through that dip that enables you to be a person that can now stay functioning at a very high level doing the
Yeah.
thing you aspire
Yeah.
to do. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind. But something that Godin talks about that I think is so important that we cover is knowing when to quit, right? Because when you hear
Mm-hmm.
the word quit, if you're anything like me, it probably elicits feelings of shame, like just yuckiness, nastiness, like, ooh, quit. Like there's a lot of negative aversion to that word, right? But it can actually be a good thing if you know
Mm-hmm.
when to quit, right?
Yeah.
Give me thoughts on that, Kofi.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Wow, man. When knowing when to quit, that is like such an important aspect. And so I'm trying to think like a really great example of this like in my life. So when I was going down the medical route, right? This was like my I had been fantasizing ever since I was a young boy and becoming a doctor. That was like my ultimate goal in life. And I remember my parents reinforced a lot of that behavior. They used to give me medical books and all these different things. So I had had this like mindset like this is going to be the career for me up until like my early 20s. And then I started to have different realizations. I started to work in a hospital and started to see the lifestyle of a lot of different physicians. I started to, think about the values that I had at the time, like freedom, being able to, create my own path. And I realized I was like, man, like I don't know if this is the right thing to do. And at that time, I had already gone through organic chemistry one and two. I'd gone through all the classes. I had done all the hard work. I'd even taken my like entry exams to get into school. I had done all that stuff and taken all that time. And I was faced with this like, decision and this turning point. It's like, all right, do I continue down this path even though I've invested all this time? Or do I maybe pivot and do something else?
Right.
And
Right.
fortunately for me, I made that decision to pivot and do something else. And I found, something that was so much better. But like a lot of people go through that period and they have the, sunk ship fallacy, right? They're
Mhm.
like sinking ship fallacy. They're like, man, like I've invested so much, so I might as well just keep going. And how many
Mhm.
of us have had that point in life where you're like, man, like I've invested much into this relationship. I've invested a lot into this job.
Oh boy.
No, and you just want to continue going because you're like, I want to have some, fruits from all this labor. You're like, I deserve to see, the end of it, even though in the back of our mind we're like, no, this isn't the right path. So being knowing when to quit and actually quitting when it's the right time actually enables you, and this is the next concept that I want to bring here, enables you to actually be the best in the world at something.
Right.
Because if you don't know when to quit, and if you just continue to do things like, that will, eventually turn to a cul-de-sac. It's a concept that we're going to define here as well too. Like you are just going to be going around a circle, and like you're going to find that like you're either not going to make progress or you're just not going to feel fulfilled about any of that
Uh,
progress you're making. That's the
uh,
reality.
100%. And you just touched on that cul-de-sac piece, which he defines as essentially a path that really leads to a place where growth potential is stifled,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about this in terms of your relationships or even your biology example, man. I'm right there with you. I got to a place where I was going down the medical journey, and in the back of my mind, I knew that I was doing it for my parents and not
Yeah.
for my. And the
Yeah.
thing that caused me to pivot was I was actually at risk of failing out of school and losing my
Mm.
scholarship as a result of going down this path and failing an organic chemistry lab exam that
Mm-hmm.
would have put my entire prospectus of being something productive in society at risk. Right. So that was that critical cul-de-sac that I was coming up against, to where I was like, you know what? This is the right time to quit, because A, I'm in a path that doesn't even align with me. And B, it's not too late for me to find something that could be a little bit more aligned with my skill sets, my abilities, and help me tap into a potential to get to the next level. So super critical there in terms of getting out of the cul-de-sac. Same with my relationship. Once upon a
Mm.
time, I was supposed to get married and had committed to that path,
Yeah.
but started to recognize, oh wow, I don't really see there being a future, like a real future
Mm-hmm.
here together. And I think that's another situation that a lot of people possibly encounter, and it can just feel like, they've gone so far down this road that there's really no opportunity to turn back and like reverse out of the cul-de-sac. And
Yeah.
there absolutely is. So I just wanted to share those two examples for the audience, because part of what we're looking to do here is not just talk about theory, but talk about things in our lives that align with some of these things that we read, and just give folks an opportunity to know that, hey, listen, like, if you are hitting some of these cul-de-sacs, you can get yourself out of it. You just got to be courageous enough to quit. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the other thing too that he talks a lot about is, you will know when you hit this dip, when you shouldn't quit, if on the forefront of the challenge or the project or whatever it is you're aspiring to do, you actually sit down with yourself and you determine what has to happen that would make you quit. I
Yeah.
think that's a really
Yeah.
valuable approach there that a lot of us fail to sort of plan for on the front end, because we're
Uh-huh.
excited to jump in full force, because of
Yeah.
novelty and the excitement of the project. So
Yeah.
I'm curious what that looks like for you, Kofi. You're very strategic with your business endeavors. You do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of masterminding, investing in networks, all these
Mm-hmm.
exciting things that you're obviously looking for some desired outcome out
Mm-hmm.
of, right?
Yeah.
What does it look like for you now in terms of actually planning what would constitute you saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and renege and pull out from this commitment because it doesn't align,
Yeah.
thus actually helping you tap closer to your potential. You see what I'm saying?
But yeah, absolutely. And it's such a great point. I find that for me, and I've not been perfect about this in the past. Let me say that I have definitely started a lot of things without that thought in the beginning. And then I
Oh,
realized,
good.
you know, I'm like, I am definitely the type of person, like I like taking opportunities. And I realized in the midst of
Yeah.
this thing, like, wow, like this isn't actually in alignment with like my goals. So I think understanding that ability to quit is so important. Where I find the biggest place that this has shown up in my life is definitely, with my career as a financial advisor. I started in 2019, and I remember like when I first started, like it was difficult. Like I think for the first 6 months, like I maybe made like $2,000. It was like it was barely. Like I was just go. I was
Yeah.
doing work. I was putting in activity. I was doing all these things and just seeing no results, right? And I saw there are so many people around me, people that may have been fortunately blessed with maybe a better network at the time or slightly older, where they could relate to people a lot better. And for me, like I remember just having this end goal in mind. Like that's what I always just kept my mind. I was like, okay, like why am I doing these things? Like why have I started this? Like who do I want to become, 5, 10 years
Yeah.
down the road? And for me, like that got me through the hardest times because like when you really set yourself like on a specific goal, especially before you start a certain action, like that like initial intention, as long as you can continue to remind yourself of it, really helps you push through so many of the different struggles that you'll face. And I believe a lot of my success, I mean, in one part, definitely due to the activity, the, continued, just doing the thing, but also just like having this like unwavering drive
Mm.
towards accomplishing what I set myself out to accomplish. And because of that, like even when I faced, harder times, I was like, all right, this is just another day. I'm just going to continue to move past. I'm going to continue to do the things that I need to be doing to, put myself in the direction
Yeah.
of where I want to go. And
Yeah.
that is like a critical thing to do if you are going to accomplish anything big in life, and especially if you're going to become the best in the world. And so I
Yeah.
want to like touch on that because he
Yeah.
talks about why being the best in the world is so important. I think that this is something that oftentimes escapes a lot of people, for many different reasons. uh,
Yeah.
so being the best in the world, I love this part too because like it illuminates why it's so valuable to be able to just focus in on one thing. And when
Mhm.
it comes down to being the best in the world, like the reality is that scarcity is value. Like, and when you're at the top, you're scarce. Like, you can be the best, football player, you can be the best basketball player, you could be the best makeup artist. Like, it doesn't matter what field you're in. Like, when you're the best in the world, you are going to just get more attention. You are going to obviously have a bigger income. You're going to have a bigger influence when you are able to stick to something for a long period of time. And the reason why like being the best in the world is important as well too is also because of Zipf's law. If I'm pronouncing that right.
Mm.
ZIPF's law, if you guys want to look that up. And I love how he really described this because Zipf's law says that like, for someone that's like in first place, like they're generally gonna get 10 times more than someone that's in 10th place. And for someone that's in first place, they're gonna get 100 times more than someone that's in 100th place. And so a lot of times people will look at like I've looked up like the top financial advisors in my industry, and I see these guys are managing like billions of dollars of assets, right? And
Mhm.
it's like as they continue to grow, it's like exponential. They just grow and grow every single year. And when you get to that point, like you really become like too big to fail. Like a lot of people will tout, like, man, like these guys, these top CEOs of companies seem so lucky. They just, they have it easy. They barely have to work and all these different things like that. Well, it's because they've gone through the dip. They've done all this work to become, one of the best in the world. So
Right.
because of that, like just because of that momentum, like you are going to do better because when you have a real problem and you also have the resources to solve that problem, like let's say I have cancer, right? Am I going to search for the doctor that just started his career that has a 2-star rating on Google and is not that good? No, I'm going to search for the guy out
Yeah.
there that is the best at what they do. I'm going to
Right.
search for the guy that has had like 99%, success rate in, operations and things like that. Like you are sought after when you become the best in the world at something.
Right. And so let's just quickly kind of bring this train home to the
Yeah.
station in terms of how people can become the best in the world. Number one, it's being aware of the dip, and I think we've touched on that, but it's being able to navigate it effectively, right?
Mhm.
So provided you're very clear on why you're doing the thing, and you just spoke to that very eloquently, you must be diligent enough to control what you can. And that means planning for how you're going to achieve what you want to do. Right now I've got 6 or 7 intentions for 2024, right? But I've broken it down
Yeah.
by quarter. More importantly, I've broken it down by day, what the 5 to 8 things I need to do against all of these intentions need to look like on a day-to-day basis to keep myself moving forward, right? So ultimately, I think what helps us with some of these larger than life goals and aspirations is being able to come to a core set of tasks that we have within our ability to push the needle on every single
Yeah.
day, and to say, hey, listen, no matter how I feel, I'm gonna do my best to push forward. Yesterday, I was ill, so I wasn't able to do this, right? But I said, hey, you know what? This is something that aligns with some of my longer term goals in terms of being able to speak on stages and being highly compensated and driving impact. Kofi, let's look at rescheduling, right?
Hmm.
Versus let's not do it at all. And
Yeah.
you and I have definitely hit a dip with this program. I mean,
Yeah.
you're busy, I'm busy, you're
Hmm.
traveling, I'm traveling internationally, whatever it may be. But I'm just so impressed at our ability to continue to like come back and say, hey, listen,
Hmm.
bro, we'll get rescheduled.
Yeah.
We'll another time. We'll just shift
Hmm.
things around and continue on, right? So that's a very high level example of navigating the dip. Secondly, it's about being dedicated to your continuous improvement, right?
Hmm.
One of the things that I love to do is I love to journal weekly and I love to take a look at where I was, in one week juxtaposed to another. And I'm sort of judging and assessing myself on core categories that help me take stock of my progress. What I've learned in doing that is I actually now become more intrinsically motivated to like sort of gamify my progress against some of the larger skill sets that I'm working to ultimately develop. So,
Mm.
what you ultimately, pour your attention to will grow, right? And so
Yeah.
if you focus on how these dips are helping you get better at critical tasks and how those tasks are helping you develop skill set, knowledge that become intrinsic assets to you that ultimately help you get to your longer term goal, you're going to be unstoppable. And last but not least, it's about outlasting the competition. You said this
Hmm.
perfect, right? Being the best in the world is scarce. Think of it as a triangle, right? All the competition is at the bottom where it's widest, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the entry level into the arena. So, of course,
Hmm.
everybody's pouring in. Of course, everybody's excited about the new shiny opportunity or learning the new skill or whatever it might be. But when you look at a triangle and you go up rung after rung after rung, right? It becomes skinnier, right? There is now less competition because people are being weeded out, right? Like they're not outlasting their competition, which I feel our competition is ourselves.
Hmm.
And I'm telling you that if you would be diligent about navigating dip, if you'd be diligent about finding a way to track your improvement and being committed to that, you will see how you will be able to ascend rung after rung after rung to ultimately, at some point in time, find yourself with not a whole lot of others at the top. And what I've heard from some of my successful mentors is that that's where collaboration actually happens.
Yeah.
People that get to the top stay there, not because they're competing with each other, but because they become the best in their category. They're now more resourced. They now have, a deeper well of expertise to tap into that they can be additive to each other.
Hmm.
And that's where you become just an icon in your space that, quite frankly, can't really be dethroned, provided you continue to do things from a space of integrity. So I
Yeah.
think that helps the audience just in terms of really understanding not just the concept, but how they can outlast this concept and get to their greatness.
Yeah, man, it's so true, man. And I want to highlight on another thing, really quick here as well too. Like and I'm gonna fire some shots. I'm gonna fire some shots. So guys, either duck, cover, run. If you're feeling a little vulnerable, I'm gonna shoot. So
Tough
I
love.
yeah, you gotta give the tough love. So I see so many people do this. But if you're out there and you're, working your 9 to 5 job, you're starting a real estate business, you're also a notary, as you're pursuing, maybe your career and podcasting and, social media, and you're trying to create all your 7 streams of income all at once, you will not be successful.
Mm,
That is the reality. And I think that this was also like it was a hard thing for me to, overcome and get to is that like I have to pick like certain areas to focus in because one of the biggest like lies that school has told us, and they say this in the book, is like you can be very well-rounded. You can be good, all areas. But the reality is that like, very successful people, they have had like a certain focus in something for like a dedicated amount of time, and they choose that certain area to become the best in. And oftentimes when that happens, other areas may fall a little short, right? Like, I was listening to Alex Hormozy, and he was saying that some period in his life, like when he was working really hard, he started to gain a little bit of weight. He was like eating at like grocery or gas stations and things like that. And he did all that so he could build what he could build. And then he was able to, apply his time to more of his physical health. So if you're scattering your attention, the reality is you're just not going to be nearly as good at something. And I'll give you guys an example that you can kind of walk through on your own time, or give to someone else. Like count 1, 2, 3, 4 numerical order, and then say A, B, C, D in alphabetical order. So you're gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. Now try to go from A1 to C4 in alpha numerical order, or A1 to D4. A1, B2, C3, D4. So if you do that exercise, you're going to realize that you're not going to go nearly as fast as you're saying A1, B2, as you're saying 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. Because when our brains are switching from task to task, we are going to lose efficiency. And
Mm.
that is one of the biggest reasons why you cannot be successful if you're doing multiple things, because like each time you start something else, you are restarting, you're changing that task that you're on. Your brain has to go back to like ground zero and figure out, where that problem is coming from or whatever you're dealing with. So just being able to have focus for an extended period of time is so valuable. And when you talk to people that also have achieved great things, they tell you they had this like 5, 10, 15-year plan for the thing that they were doing. They weren't thinking in the short term. They're like, I'm gonna have this immense amount of focus and just like almost in a slightly insane way, just like gear in and become obsessed with this thing for a long enough time for them to get good at. So like for you guys out there that are doing multiple things, like everything is going to have its shortfalls. Not everything is going to be good. So pick something where that highlights your skills, that, shows a lot of the, that aligns with a lot of the values that you have. And then just do that thing and focus on it. And like, if you get through again that dip, like you'll find that you will be able to, one, see the fruits of your labor as well too. And then after you were able to actually successfully do that thing, you whether you build $1 million business or whatever it is, like then you can start to maybe sometimes divert your attention. But if you don't have that initial focus, like nothing is going to work, because everything's an opportunity. But nothing is going to work unless you focus in on one thing and actually, you know, continue to do it so you can become proficient and excellent at it at the end of the day.
Uncle Kofi. Wise words, but honestly, very sage words and very, very sound advice in a culture and an age where we are just so flooded with new ideas, opportunities, all the things, right? So I hope this serves everybody listening. And I know that this has obviously served me. I mean, this was right on time with a number of
Mhm.
things that I'm currently working through, man. So shout out to Seth Godin on the dip.
Yeah, man.
If
Oh,
you,
yes.
if anybody has any questions, any comments, please drop us,
Hmm.
a message in the comments. We're looking to make this as interactive as possible. We'd love to hear, what you're currently looking forward to in terms of putting some of this information to good use. Maybe you want to share what dips you're currently coming up across. Kofi and I have been at this for a little while. We're certainly not immune to the dip. It really is an opportunity to see that, hey, it's a normal thing, normalize it. And I feel like when you destigmatize it, you're actually able to actually push through in a more seamless way. So we welcome you to talk about it. That way we can make
Absolutely.
it a lot less scary and kind of, dilute the power
Hmm.
that it's kind of had on us. in the
Yeah.
past. But with that, Kofi, man, I'm excited to get into the next one. I don't know if we've
Yes.
decided what we're going to break down next yet, but
Yeah, and we're gonna keep it a mystery for you guys. We're gonna keep it a mystery.
cool,
We're gonna come up
cool.
with a really, awesome book here coming up soon. And last closing words there that I want to tell everyone is this is something that I'm trying to do, but like fall in love with the dip. And if you can get yourself to fall in love with the dip, like it is such a powerful thing because like I've even with this, show that we're doing, like I realized that like these challenges that we're like, coming across and keeping it, sustaining it, like when you go through a dip, like that means you're actually doing something that's meaningful at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Because like nothing that doesn't have a dip is really going to be meaningful at the day. If it's easy and if it's super, if you can just go ahead and do it, like it's not going to be meaningful. So when you're able to actually change your mindset around the dip and see it as like this is what's necessary, because I'm doing something that is going to be impactful and meaningful, it can really just change your mindset towards a lot of the challenges that you'll face. So we are excited to see you guys soon here. We're going to be diving into another awesome book. Again, we're going to keep it a secret, but we will catch you guys soon on Coffee with Karl and Kofi.
much love, everybody.
Peace.